Alrighty, good afternoon. So, I realized in my last video I didn't do a fantastic job of showing these two transmissions side by side, showing close-ups of the differences in the casing. So we'll do that real quick here, then we'll jump into the next portion. So, I mentioned earlier that these two have much stronger cases, but it really helps if you see them up close. Hi, cat. Okay. So I mentioned that there's a lot more webbing off this bell housing. This whole structural member joining the bell housing flange back towards the gear sets, that's just not present over here on this guy, right? So there's that little tiny web here, but that doesn't make that big jump all the way up like that one does. Now the other guy is these guys are much taller off the case itself. Specifically this one's way taller. So looking over to here, these guys just aren't, I mean they got this gap for the VSS. It's just not nearly as fat or as tall on the side of this case here. It does have that same huge fat flange ribbing, whatever you want to call it, coming off the side there. So just wanted to point that out. Oh, I also was able to, I pulled the little caps where the axle stubs will go, spun the input shaft, and I was able to figure out what gears are what. Got that done. Now a couple other items I noticed while looking over this engine. So there's a couple reasons I grabbed this one specifically from JDM West. They're out in I think it was like La Habra or something. Anyway, so they had like 7 of these to choose from. The reason I grabbed this one specifically is the all aluminum surfaces were really clean. Most of them sitting there had like, there's a little bit of that scaling that you can see here. It's just kind of that ugly, oily, scaly oxidization stuff. The other engines had it all over the aluminum. This one had it only on like a couple little spots, basically the edges and stuff. But the whole face was very clean compared to the others. The other reason I grabbed it, so there's this cool trick you can do with JDM engines. If you pull the oil cap, down on the bottom here, I don't know if this GoPro will show it, they have a stamped in or embossed in date code. And this one has a year code of 2006. So the oil cap was made in 2006. Did the engine keep its same oil cap through its lifetime? Maybe. This guy's got a little bit of damage probably during loading and handling and whatnot, but oil cap is an 06. Highly unlikely that somebody bought a new oil cap. So all the other engines sitting on the racks at JDM West were 03s. So I mean, it's not like there's differences between the model years really. They're all the same engine, but this one's potentially 3 years newer. So there's no way to know what mileage was on this engine. It's just not possible. So that's kind of a bummer, but we're just gonna have to live with it. A couple things I noticed when I was looking closely at everything. These two right here, these two sensors, that guy and that guy, those guys were damaged at some point. Good news is the connectors are gonna be fine. So we just gotta get new sensors. These guys are both this guy's a single wire, so I have no idea what this one does. This other one's a 2-prong. And it's attached to this little guy here, which I'm pretty sure is a solenoid, on-off solenoid. There's another one up here, another one here, and another one here. Now this guy also, same deal. This little guy sticks out, so really easy to knock that guy off. Anyway, so I think these are solenoids. I think these are the the control solenoids for the variable valve timing and variable valve lift systems. So I'm pretty sure they're oil actuated, so they use a solenoid to bump up the oil pressure to advance or retard the timing or open or close the lifters. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what they're for. This guy as well, this little plug would normally go right here. That guy's dead, so same deal, at least the connector's good. We can buy new solenoids as we see fit. The other guy I noticed, so this should be the map sensor. This guy has a snapped connector, so that's kind of a bummer. It's not the end of the world to build a new connector, so we'll just see what we need to do. We might end up with a whole different map sensor anyway if I go throttle body instead of common plenum intake manifold. The other, I saw this little guy hanging out. Well, this is just the AC compressor clutch on off, so that's, you know, it's easy enough. What else did I see? One thing I was noticing is there's a lot of plumbing in here that may or may not stick around. So some of it's like, so this guy here specifically going to the throttle body, that's coming off the water pump, and I'm guessing it's some kind of hot water, almost like a warm-up deal. I'm really not sure why they would send the hot water up there. We'll just have to try and figure it out as we go. I'm pretty sure, well, I put this in a bad spot, so we're not really able to get back there. Pretty sure I found the PCV, or not the exhaust gas return, so we know where to block that off. Yeah, so just taking my time trying to figure everything out, plan out what I need to get. So that's about it for there. So we'll pause this one, pause this clip, and we'll start talking about the Volkswagen engine. Alright, so I've started the first steps to undo this Volkswagen engine and pull it out of here. Whoops. Took the AN fuel lines off, the pressure regulator. I'll try to get this thing in here. Hopefully we don't have too many bright spots with this sun coming in. Got this is the high pressure line. Comes off the high mic, or the tiny little micron filter. Fuel pump gets fed off this big fat tube from a slosh pot up here. Slosh pot has this feeder line. There's a little tiny clicker electric pump, you know, a little low pressure one, so that one just feeds the slosh pot, and then the fuel is able to dump in. That's like a 7/8 hose or something. High pressure into here, pressure gets regulated, sent to the fuel rails, to the CBR throttle bodies. Then excess pressure off the fuel pump goes through this guy up here, and it dumps back into the slosh pot. Excess pressure in the system follows this line to the front of the tank, and that's the fueling loop. The pressure regulator is port pressure referenced, so this little line connects to all of these throttle body ports, so the fuel pressure is map regulated as it should be. Since we're talking the fuel injection, so this is my kind of silly DIY intake air temp sensor. It's an air temperature sensor. It's just a thermistor sitting right next to the intakes, so ideally the air in this region is about all the same temperature. It's kind of all relative anyway, because you just tune for it in the map on the PC, so that's easy enough. This guy down here, there's another, basically the exact same thermistor. That's a like a battery terminal lug, like one of the round ones. So I stuck that guy in there, epoxied it in, and bolted it down. That's it fills the role of a coolant temp sensor, the CLT sensor. You know, we don't have a water cool system, and I at the time didn't want to bolt something directly to the cylinder head, but this thing does a good enough job of telling the ECU when it's hot. Now, if you follow the shielded spark plug wires, these go up to the 4 Chevy LS2 ignition coils I have hiding behind the shroud. It's an individual coil on plug. Now, with the Mega Squirt, the MS2 Micro Squirt, I didn't go and reconvert the yeah, you got to open up the board and solder some connections if you want to run 4 spark outputs. So right now these 4 coil packs are driven by 2 spark outputs. They run in a wasted spark configuration, so it will fire the spark. Let's say for this cylinder, it fires it on top dead center firing, and then top dead center of after the exhaust stroke and before the intake. So it fires twice. It's not as efficient, but it's an easier way to use a cheaper ECU. Let's see, so back in here there's another, so this I don't know if you see the line bend in here. So this air line, nice thing about these bike throttle bodies, they got 2 different port references. Anyway, so this guy got it running to both of them. And we have a map sensor out of like a GM vehicle. Unfortunately, that map sensor is dead right now. The ECU map is run off alphanumeric, so that means it's using the throttle position sensor to determine engine load. So this is no load, you know, 50% load, 100% load, and it's all off a little resistor. What do you call them? The variable resistance rotisserie deals. Anyway, throttle position sensor back there. And then hiding behind the crank pulley, this is the Scat aluminum crank pulley, is a steel missing tooth trigger wheel. And you can see the back of one of the screws right there. That thing is screwed in and Loctited in. Machine that thing on a lathe to make a recess to set that guy in there. And then hiding behind the shroud, let's see, way down there, and that's the crank position sensor. Let's see, at the time I opted not to put a cam position sensor. That would be driven off the distributor gear. So it's batch fuel, which means there's only 2 fuel outputs, so it's kind of like wasted spark in that it's just going to spray twice per firing cycle, rather than or more or longer or whatever, right? But it's not going to be fire number 1, fire number 2, fire number 3, fire number 4, right? It's just going to be filling the intake runners with fuel. So in order to do that, not wasted spark, to do 1 ignition event per firing cycle, right? You need a cam position sensor to tell it what the position of the valves are in the firing order. Basically, you need to be able to tell it what the firing order is. So, like I said earlier, it's just a cheaper way to make a cheaper ECU work. Yeah, and if you do set it up for 1 fuel squirt per cycle, you call that sequential fueling. So, what else should we talk about? Oh yeah, the fuel pump. I mean, this is pretty standard, or not fuel pump, the oil pump. It's a it's got that block off stuck in there. It's got that special oil plate, and it pumps oil out to the the oil filter and through an oil cooler. The oil cooler's got a fan on it. The fan's just on a manual switch right now. I never went and put it up and put a relay into it with a temp sensor. So it's still got the, I believe it was a Scat 1.5" exhaust, ceramic coated. And this muffler, I have no idea where this muffler came from. It came with the blue car when I bought it, when it had a 1600 on it, and this exhaust was bigger than the muffler I had for it at the time, and I liked the sound better, so stuck with it. Right there, brazed in, that's a wideband O2 sensor. And up under here is the wideband O2 sensor controller. Gotta have a wideband O2 sensor if you're gonna do fuel injection. Gotta have it. Anyway, so that's kind of the basics of what makes this little 1915cc run. So I'm gonna be pulling this thing out. I'm gonna have no use for it. Ideally, what I want to do is I want to try and find a younger-ish college student, hopefully an engineer, someone with a Volkswagen that wants a project and wants to learn, because I've always felt that this car taught me more than what I learned in the classroom, but that's kind of my opinion. Yeah, so if any of you guys know a young engineering student that's got a nice classic Volkswagen, looking for a project, this is a good starting point, a good learning point. There's a lot you can do to this little thing to make, you know, good power out of it. Yeah, I just decided that I like this option better. So I don't know, not too much else to say. Oh, if say this supposed college student doesn't want to jump straight into fuel injection and wants something more classic, I have an original set of cadrons that were set up for this 1915 engine with the vents and jetting ready to go, just bolted on. And then there's probably, you know, it's easy enough to find a distributor. Obviously mine is not exactly functioning right now. Anyway, yeah, if you all know someone that wants a Volkswagen engine, if I can find a college student that's motivated and wants to learn, I'll sell it to him for cheap. If not, I'll just try to sell it for, I guess, market value. I'll have to figure out what market value is. So anyway, I think that's it for talking today. I'll probably set up a time lapse and see if I can film myself taking this little air-cooled engine out. So that's it. Have a great day. We'll see you later.